There's a feeling you've had before. You won't admit it easily, but it's there. Someone you know fails. They lose something they wanted badly. They fall short in a visible way. And for just a moment, before you can stop it, something inside you feels good. Not in a loud, obvious way. Not in a way you'd ever say out loud. But it's there. A small, quiet satisfaction that flickers through you before guilt rushes in to cover it up. You tell yourself you're a good person. You tell yourself you care. And maybe you do. But that feeling, that tiny spark of pleasure at someone else's pain, it happened. And it happens more than you think. This isn't about being cruel or evil. It's about being human. Because the truth is, we're wired to feel this way. There's even a word for it, Schadenfreude, the pleasure derived from another person's misfortune. It sounds ugly when you say it like that. It sounds like something only terrible people experience. But research shows that almost everyone feels it. The difference is just how much and how often, and whether you're willing to look at it directly. Think about the last time someone you knew got something you wanted, a promotion, a relationship, success. How did you feel? Really feel underneath the polite congratulations? If you're honest, there was a sting, a sense of injustice, a whisper that said, "Why them and not me?" And when that same person stumbles later, when they lose what they gained or fail at something new, there's a strange relief. Not because you're heartless, but because their failure makes your own struggles feel less personal, less like evidence of your inadequacy. It levels the field. It reminds you that no one is untouchable. But here's where it gets darker. The people whose failures bring you the most satisfaction are often the ones closest to your own level, not strangers. Not celebrities so far removed from your life that their wins and losses feel irrelevant. No, it's the people in your circle, your peers, your colleagues, the ones running the exact same race you are. Their failures feel like proof that you're still in the game, that you're not falling behind, that maybe, just maybe, you're actually doing okay. And that feeling, it's intoxicating. Because deep down we're all terrified of being left behind. You can see it everywhere once you start looking. The way people talk about failed relationships. The way they discuss someone's business that collapsed, or a creative project that flopped, or a public embarrassment that went viral. There's always sympathy on the surface, always the right words, but underneath, there's something else. A curiosity that feels almost hungry, a fascination that lingers a little too long. Because watching someone else fail is a way of studying your own vulnerability without having to live through it yourself. It's a rehearsal, a warning, a reminder that it could happen to you but hasn't yet. And that gap feels like safety. The worst part? The people you feel this about don't even have to be people you dislike. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes the people whose failures bring you the most complex satisfaction are people you care about. People you respect, people you call friends, because their success can feel like a reflection of your own inadequacy. And when they fail, it's not that you want them to suffer, it's that their suffering makes your own existence feel less heavy, less like you're the only one struggling, less like you're uniquely broken or behind. Their pain becomes a strange comfort, and that realization is harder to sit with than almost anything else. So where does this come from? Why are we built this way? The answer lies in something primal, something that goes back long before modern society. It comes from comparison, from the deep ancient need to know where you stand in the hierarchy. Because for most of human history, your position in the group determined whether you survived. Your brain is still running that same software. It's still scanning the environment, measuring yourself against others, trying to figure out if you're winning or losing. And when someone near your level falls, it shifts the equation in your favor, even if nothing in your actual life has changed. This is why social media has turned Schadenfreude into an epidemic. Every day you're bombarded with curated highlight reels of other people's lives, their wins, their beauty, their success. And your brain interprets this as data, as evidence of where you stand. So when one of those people stumbles, when the mask slips and you see their failure, their divorce, their scandal, their breakdown, there's a release, a sense of, see? They're not untouchable. They're just like me. It's not that you want them to suffer. It's that their suffering gives you permission to stop feeling so inadequate in comparison. But here's the trap. The more you feed this feeling, the more it distorts your relationship with success. Because if someone else's failure makes you feel better, then their success must make you feel worse. And that creates a zero-sum view of the world. A belief that for you to win, someone else has to lose. So you start rooting against people, not openly, not consciously, but quietly, in the back of your mind. You start hoping they slip, hoping they make a mistake, hoping they reveal themselves as flawed or fake, because their fall feels like your rise, even when it isn't. And the people you're closest to, they feel this from you, maybe not in any specific moment, but over time, they sense it. The subtle lack of enthusiasm when they share good news, the way your energy shifts when they talk about their achievements, the questions you ask that sound supportive but are really searching for cracks, for doubts, for signs that things aren't as good as they seem. You think you're hiding it, but people can feel when you're not fully rooting for them, and it creates distance, a quiet, invisible distance that erodes trust without either of you fully understanding why. There's a particular cruelty in how this plays out with people who were once below you and then surpassed you. Maybe it's a friend who was struggling and then figured it out, a colleague who was average and then became exceptional, a sibling who was always in your shadow and then stepped into the light. Their rise feels like a personal insult, like a violation of the natural order, because you had a story about who they were, and their success rewrites that story in a way that makes you the one who got left behind. So when they fail, when they stumble, when they lose even a fraction of what they gained, there's a satisfaction. It feels like justice, like the universe correcting itself. But really, it's just your ego trying to protect itself from the pain of being surpassed. And then there's the version of this that targets people you perceive as privileged, people who seem to have it easier, who seem to glide through life with advantages you never had. When they fail, it feels like cosmic balance, like proof that their success was never really earned, that it was luck or connections or circumstances, not merit. And maybe that's true sometimes, but often it's just a story you tell yourself to make their failure feel righteous instead of petty. Because if their failure is justified, then your satisfaction isn't cruel. It's moral, it's fair, and you can enjoy it without guilt. But here's what you're not seeing. Every time you take pleasure in someone else's failure, you're training your brain to associate success with danger. You're teaching yourself that being visible, being ambitious, being successful makes you a target. And so, unconsciously, you start to hold yourself back. You dim your own light. You downplay your own wins. You sabotage your own progress. Because if success makes you the villain in someone else's story, maybe it's safer to stay small. Maybe it's safer to stay in the middle, where no one notices, where no one envies, where no one secretly hopes you fail. And that's the real cost. Not just the damage you do to others by resenting their success, but the damage you do to yourself by fearing your own.
So what happens when you live like this long enough? When schadenfreude becomes your default response, your automatic reflex, you start to calcify. You become someone who can't celebrate anything without measuring it against yourself first. Someone who hears good news and immediately translates it into bad news about your own life. A friend gets engaged, and instead of joy, you feel the weight of your own loneliness. A colleague gets promoted, and instead of inspiration, you feel the sting of being overlooked. Someone shares a win, and your first instinct isn't to lean in, it's to find the flaw, the catch, the hidden downside that makes their success less threatening to your ego. And the terrible thing is, you don't even realize you're doing it anymore. It's become the lens through which you see everything. You've trained yourself to look for failure in others because it's the only thing that makes you feel stable. The only thing that quiets the constant anxiety that you're falling behind. So you scroll through social media looking for cracks in the facade. You listen to conversations waiting for someone to admit they're struggling. You watch people's lives like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And when it does, when someone finally stumbles, you feel that familiar rush. That brief, guilty pleasure that tells you you're still okay. That you haven't been left behind. That maybe, in some twisted way, you're actually winning. But here's the psychological trap you've walked into. The more you rely on other people's failures to feel good about yourself, the more you need them to fail. It becomes a dependency, an addiction. Because if everyone around you starts succeeding, if they all figure it out and move forward while you stay stuck, what does that say about you? It says you're the problem. It says you're the one who couldn't keep up, and that's unbearable. So unconsciously, you start to create an environment where failure is normalized, where ambition is suspicious, where anyone who tries too hard or wants too much or believes they can have better becomes a target. For subtle mockery, quiet skepticism, or passive sabotage, you do this in small ways. Ways that seem harmless. A joke that undermines someone's confidence right before a big moment. A doubt planted casually in conversation. A question that sounds like concern but is really designed to make them second-guess themselves. Are you sure you're ready for that? Do you really think that's a good idea? What if it doesn't work out? You tell yourself you're being realistic, that you're protecting them from disappointment. But what you're really doing is protecting yourself from their success. Because if they succeed, you have to face the fact that you could have too. That the only thing standing between you and what you want is you, and the people around you, they start to change. Not because they want to, but because they have to. They learn to downplay their wins around you, to hide their excitement, to apologize for their success. They start sharing less, celebrating less, being less of themselves because they've learned that you can't handle it, that their joy makes you uncomfortable, that their growth makes you retreat. And slowly, without anyone saying it out loud, your relationships become transactional. Built not on genuine connection, but on an unspoken agreement that no one gets too far ahead. That everyone stays at the same level, that safety comes from sameness. But here's where it gets really dark. The more you do this, the more you attract people who operate the same way. People who also need others to fail to feel okay about themselves. People who also can celebrate success without resentment, and together, you create a bubble. A safe, comfortable bubble where mediocrity is the standard and ambition is the enemy. Where everyone agrees that people who succeed are lucky, or fake, or selling out. Where failure is romanticized as authenticity and success is dismissed as shallow. And inside that bubble, you feel understood. You feel validated. You feel like you've found your people, but what you've really found is a trap. A collective agreement to stay small. Because the truth is, misery doesn't just love company. It demands it. It requires it. And the moment someone in that circle tries to break free, tries to take a risk or pursue something bigger, or believe they deserve more, the group turns on them. Not with obvious cruelty, but with doubt, with jokes, with the same subtle undermining you've perfected. And if that person succeeds despite it all, if they actually make it out, they're not celebrated. They're resented. They're proof that everyone else could have done it too, but chose not to. And that's the most unforgivable thing of all. So here's the question you have to ask yourself. Is this who you want to be? Is this the life you want to live? One where other people's pain is your comfort? Where their failure is your validation? Where your sense of worth is entirely dependent on making sure no one around you gets too far ahead? Because if you're honest, you already know the answer. You already know this isn't making you happy. It's making you bitter. It's making you small. It's turning you into someone who can't feel joy without comparing it to someone else's suffering. And that's not living, that's surviving, and barely. The way out starts with a single admission. You have to stop pretending you're above this. Stop pretending you don't feel schadenfreude. Stop hiding behind justifications and rationalizations and the belief that your resentment is somehow different. Somehow more justified than everyone else's. Because it's not. It's the same. It's your ego trying to protect itself from the unbearable truth that you're afraid. Afraid you're not enough. Afraid you'll never be enough. Afraid that if you try and fail, everyone will see what you've always suspected about yourself. That you don't have what it takes. But here's what changes everything. The moment you stop seeing other people's success as a threat and start seeing it as proof of what's possible, your entire world shifts. Because if they can do it, so can you. If they can overcome obstacles, face rejection, risk failure, and still make it, then maybe you can too. Their success isn't evidence of your inadequacy. It's evidence that the game isn't rigged. That hard work and persistence and belief actually matter. That the universe isn't conspiring against you. You're just conspiring against yourself. And when you start to genuinely celebrate other people's wins, something strange happens. You start to win too. Not because of some mystical law of attraction, But because celebrating success rewires your brain, it trains you to see opportunity instead of threat, to see possibility instead of limitation, to believe that there's enough for everyone, including you. And that belief is everything. Because the people who succeed aren't the ones who tear others down. They're the ones who lift others up. They're the ones who build networks instead of walls, who create abundance instead of scarcity, who understand that the only way to truly rise is to help others rise too. This doesn't mean you'll never feel schadenfreude again. You will. It's human. It's hardwired. But you'll catch it faster. You'll recognize it for what it is. A defense mechanism. A sign that you're feeling threatened. A signal that you need to look inward instead of outward. And when you do, when you ask yourself why that person's success bothers you so much, you'll find the real answer. It's not about them. It's never been about them. It's about what their success represents. The risks you haven't taken. The dreams you've abandoned. The person you could have been if you just believed you were worth the effort. And here's the final, most uncomfortable truth. The people whose failures you've secretly enjoyed, they're not thinking about you. They're not measuring themselves against you. They're too busy living their lives, taking their risks, facing their fears, building their futures. While you've been sitting on the sidelines, watching and waiting and hoping for them to fall, they've been in the arena, getting knocked down, getting back up, learning, growing, becoming. And the gap between you and them isn't talent. It isn't luck. It isn't privilege. It's courage. The courage to be visible, to be vulnerable, to risk being the person whose failure someone else secretly enjoys. So the real question isn't why you feel schadenfreude. The real question is what you're going to do about it. Are you going to keep feeding it? Keep letting it shape your relationships, your choices, your entire life? Or are you going to starve it? Are you going to choose consciously and deliberately to be someone different? Someone who roots for others, who celebrates their wins, who understands that their success doesn't diminish you. It expands what you believe is possible, and that expansion, that's where your own success begins. Because in the end, the only failure that will haunt you isn't the one you experienced. It's the one you never risked, the life you never attempted, the person you never became because you were too busy watching everyone else and hoping they'd fall so you wouldn't have to feel so bad about staying exactly where you are. And that's the kind of failure you can't blame on anyone else. That's the kind of failure that's entirely, completely, devastatingly yours. Subscribe to the channel. Because the greatest tragedy isn't that we feel pleasure in other people's pain. It's that we let that pleasure become a substitute for our own success. And by the time we realize what we've lost, we become exactly what we feared most. Not someone who failed, but someone who never really tried. Now let's talk about what happens when you finally see it. When you catch yourself in the middle of that feeling and realize what you've become, it's not a gentle awakening. It's brutal, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start noticing all the moments you dismiss someone's success with a casual comment. All the times you changed the subject when someone shared good news. All the conversations where you searched for problems in their happiness because you couldn't find any in yours. Keep telling yourself that the life you have is the life you wanted. But time keeps moving. And one day, you'll run out of it. And on that day, all that will be left is the truth you spent your whole life running from. You could have done more, been more, tried more. And you didn't, not because you couldn't, but because you were afraid. So what do you do with this? How do you live with the knowledge that you've wasted time, sabotaged relationships, and built a life around protecting yourself from the very thing you actually want? You start by forgiving yourself. But because genuine celebration is a muscle, and like any muscle, it gets stronger the more you use it. And here's what no one tells you. The more you celebrate other people, the more you start believing that success is actually possible. Not just for them, for you. Because if they can do it, if regular people with fears and doubts and past failures can still figure it out, then maybe the story you've been telling yourself isn't true. Maybe you're not uniquely broken. Maybe you're not destined to fail. Maybe the only thing stopping you is the belief that you're already stopped. And once that belief cracks, once you start to see it as a story rather than a fact, everything changes. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic transformation, but in quiet moments. In small choices. In the decision to try one more time even though you're terrified. You'll still feel schadenfreude sometimes. You'll still have moments where someone's failure gives you that brief, guilty rush of relief. But now you'll recognize it for what it is. A signal. A warning light that tells you you're feeling threatened, you're feeling small. Because their belief will start to feel contagious. Their courage will start to feel possible. Their success will start to feel like proof that you could do it too. But the most important relationship that will change is the one with yourself. Because when you stop needing other people to feel okay, you stop needing to fail to stay safe. You stop sabotaging yourself before you even begin. You stop choosing comfort over growth, safety over possibility, stagnation over risk. And you start to build something. Not perfectly, not without setbacks or doubts or moments where you want to quit. But you build it anyway. And every small win, every tiny step forward, every moment where you choose courage over comfort becomes proof. Proof that you're not who you used to be. Proof that change is real. Proof that the life you want is actually possible if you're willing to be uncomfortable enough to reach for it. And here's the final truth. The one that matters most. Years from now, when you look back on your life, you won't remember the moments when other people failed. You won't care about their divorces, their bankruptcies, their public embarrassments. Those moments that once felt so important, so satisfying, so necessary for your own sense of stability will mean nothing. What you'll remember is what you built, what you tried, what you risked. The moments when you were terrified and did it anyway. The times you failed and got back up. The relationships where you showed up fully, where you celebrated without resentment, where you loved without keeping score. That's what stays. That's what matters. That's what makes a life worth living. Subscribe to the channel. Because in the end, the question isn't whether other people will fail. They will. Everyone does eventually. The question is whether you'll be so busy watching them that you forget to build your own life. Whether you'll trade the possibility of your own success for the comfort of witnessing someone else's failure. Whether you'll let schadenfreude become the closest thing you have to joy. Or whether you'll choose something harder, something scarier, something infinitely more worth it. The choice to build, to try, to risk being someone whose success other people might secretly resent. Because that's not a weakness. That's proof you're finally living.